Hello to you, Keri-Leigh. Let's talk realities for a moment. A lot of companies who support NPOs are losing their own money. It's going to have a knock-on effect, isn't it, into the space of NPOs. How do we find the balance?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really quite a tough season for the not-for-profit sector. We're finding that a lot of businesses are under strain, and one of the first places that people are cutting back is with their sort of social development spends. They're either putting them on pause or cutting back on their departments. And so our not-for-profits are seeing an increased need due to COVID and the job losses and the economic landscape at the moment. And the funding is really drying up. So we're seeing quite a lot of innovative things coming together with the not-for-profits, a lot of collaboration. And the sector's really looking for ways to maximize the amounts of impact they can have with the resources available at the moment.
Well, let's talk about that impact. You're telling us as well that organizations mustn't look at what it's costing necessarily to run an NPO, but to look at the impact that NPO is having. But there are going to be bean counters, aren't there, who are going to ask the question, what does it cost to do the right thing?
So I think people default to looking at financials, which is an absolutely good thing to do. You do need to make sure that an organization's financials are in order, but they don't necessarily tell you about the impact that the organization's having. And so we find a lot of people have an interesting concept that a 20 to 30% overhead is all that you can have as a not-for-profit. And the reality is research shows that depending on what intervention you're running, it can be between 10 or 90% overhead costs. So we're encouraging people to, rather than scrutinize the financials, so we have organizations giving us really interesting stories about, needing to explain stamps and postage and all sorts of interesting, very small amounts. Whereas you could actually be looking at the impact. So rather, let's look at impact. Definitely look at financials. We want to make sure that they're in order, but measure impact and determine if the organization is doing the best that they can through the impact that they're having and not through the amount of overhead costs that they have as an organization.
Yeah, it's not all about the checkbook at the end of the day. Keri-Leigh, let's talk, if we can. I'm going to ask you to put your PR and communications hat on. I'm going to do the same thing for this question as well. When we say, and I want to just repeat this, that organizations mustn't focus on what it costs, but what NPOs are doing, do you think we're losing the impact of what NPOs are doing because either the not-for-profit organization itself or the companies footing the bill are not doing proper PR and comms, so people aren't understanding the impact of what they're doing?
I do think that the good stories could be told better, or there could be more stories, good stories out there. We are in such a privileged position where I hear the amazing stories every single day. But we know that good news isn't always the thing that sells the most. So I do think that they're good at communicating, but we're not necessarily, as a sort of country, we don't showcase those people enough. We don't showcase those stories enough. So I think we just need to start looking harder for those stories and showcasing them, because there really are amazing things happening and incredible impact that is happening in all sorts of spaces in our nation.
Keri-Leigh, before I say goodbye to you, let's imagine for a moment there's a high-ranking CEO of a company who is supporting a not-for-profit organization. They're looking at their CSI budget for this year, starting to go through line items with a big red pen. Last question to you. What do you tell that CEO? How are you going to convince him or her to keep the support they've got currently?
I think it's a long-term view. So if you think about the long term, if our country can be more stable when it comes to our socioeconomic divide, if we can ensure that more people are able to get access to our economy or have job opportunities, it is in the long run going to be good for your business and for just our country in general. So I'd motivate from that perspective. But I'd also encourage them to, if they are doing social investment, to standardize their impact reporting and have a way of comparing apples with apples so that you can really see where you're getting the greatest impact for your resources. And in that way, you know that even though your budgets may have shrunk, that you are making the biggest impact possible. And it's actually something we've recently just done with about 95 not-for-profits and corporates. Is over the last 3 years, we've actually put together a standardized reporting template that we truly encourage your corporates and your bigger philanthropic foundations to start utilizing. It will be launched in March, so that we can start to standardize and really see where those impact places are, because our resources are limited, so we need to be really strategic with the way that we deploy our funds.
Yeah, it's the reality of it as well, but also offering some kind of solution as well. From March, you can go and find that standard reporting mechanism. Keri-Leigh Paschal, thank you very much indeed. If you want to try and find more information on her and the organisation, just go and look for the National Builder Trust. I'm sure much of what Keri has said will be available online if you look for the National Builder Trust.